All right, guys, let's do 5-minute limit on these players.
Okay.
Travis Kelce, Dan, he is, for many people, a top 5 pick. You have him as bust proof. Obviously, I think it's easy to say this, right? The only thing that's going to hold him back is age. But I am interested why you think he's bust proof.
Yeah, I mean, I've been making the case for Travis Kelce on this show for 2 straight years. Last year, I said he should have been an early round first pick, first half a first round pick. He was back end. I got him every draft. 2 years ago, I was getting him in round 2. The advantage Travis Kelce gives you over every other tight end is so unbelievable that last season, and these are the numbers on it, he doubled the 8th best tight end in points per game. There were only 7 players who scored double digits. He scored 18.6 fantasy points per game in PPR. And again, the 8th best scored 9.53. He's now finished as the tight end 1 5 of the last 7 seasons. In those other 2 seasons, he finishes the tight end 2 overall. The offense we've seen go through many different variations there in Kansas City. They've had wide receiver 1s. They've had no wide receiver 1s. It does not matter. Travis Kelce is still going to score fantasy points, still going to be a focal point in the red zone, still going to be the guy who just chews up yards in the intermediate range, still has probably the best rapport, in my opinion, of any skill position player in the NFL with his quarterback right now. I don't know if a case can be made that anyone has a better rapport than Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes have right now. You've obviously seen some of the videos where there just seems like they're on the exact same mental page. I'm a big rapport believer. I've made the case before. I make it again. So I got a guy here with the best rapport of the quarterback in the NFL, a clear-cut red zone role, beats zone better than any tight end I've ever seen in the history of NFL, and what do teams play against the Chiefs? Because that's all they can do.
Zone.
You can't play man against Patrick Mahomes. I don't really see any possible way that he's not, once again, one of the biggest advantages in fantasy football, like he's been completely underdrafted in the past 2 seasons. Finally, we're starting to see him go like 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th overall, like he should have gone for the past 2 years, in my opinion. And once again, I don't really see any way this thing falls apart, except for, of course, age-based injury. But we've seen Travis Kelce actually build out a very, if you believe in this stuff, strong injury profile over his NFL career. He came into the NFL with a big injury concern and profile. It's partially why he was drafted not in the first round. But, and also production wasn't great in that Cincinnati offense in college. But since then, he really hasn't had too many injuries that have kind of slowed him down. He's played in a lot of games. I don't have these numbers in front of me at the moment, but I don't really know if just because he's 1 year older, we can say the injury jumps so big, because we said that last year and we said that 2 years ago.
Flimsy case against this. First of all, I just wanted to point out 4 wide receivers who I think have very good rapport with their quarterbacks. I think Kupp with Stafford is up there. Burrow with Jamar Chase. I mean, they played together in college. It goes without saying. I think Josh Allen's got it with Stephon Diggs. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has it with Jared Goff. Remember that point for about 4 minutes from now. Kelce, the last 5 seasons, he does have a year where he averaged over 20 PPR points per game. It was not last year. Last year was 18.6. The other 3 years, 15.8, 15.4, 17.9. That's pretty good. That was his in 2018. So 2019, 2021, under 16 PPR points per game. My question would be, if your quarterback that you take tight end that you take in the first round only gives you 15 and a half, 15 and 3/4 PPR points per game, is that a win or a loss? I mean, I'd argue that's a win, because the tight end position is so thin that you're still getting, what would it be? Like 40% more fantasy points than your average top 12 tight end from that guy that you're taking in round 1. It might sting you a little bit if you take Travis Kelce and he gives you 15.7 PPR points per game compared to guys that go after him at other positions that are going to be 17, 18 PPR points per game. But you've got that advantage with tight end. The only other thing that I could say, and again, like I said, flimsy case against Travis Kelce, is the opposite of what I said earlier for the case against Patrick Mahomes being the most bust-proof quarterback in the game. What if Kadarius Toney ends up being amazing? What if Sky Moore takes that second jump in his second season and is a better wide receiver? Justin Ross manages to stay healthy, becomes a downfield threat for Kansas City. And there's enough there at wide receiver where it's just this huge group that actually takes work away from Travis Kelce and puts him below 15 PPR points per game. That would be disappointing to see, but you can't make the case for that. You can't expect that. Can't even hope for that. That sounds silly to say, which is why Travis Kelce goes where he goes in fantasy drafts.
Yep. Yeah, the bust case for me for Kelce is just that he's not going to outscore the wide receivers and probably the running backs that are being taken in the top 5. So you have to ask yourself that question: how much value is that positional advantage? Like Devontae Adams scored, I think, 20-ish more points than Travis Kelce. Justin Jefferson scored probably 40 to 50 more points.
Yeah, but like quarterbacks score more than all those players.
Right, but you can get a quarterback that outscores Travis Kelce in round 8. You can only get those wide receivers maybe with those first several.
You can only get that one tight end who scores that much.
I understand.
That's the other point.
I have Kelce, certainly as a top 5 pick. I had him at number 1. Right now, probably around 3. I don't know where he's going to fall between 2 and 5 for me, but you are losing fantasy points when
you're losing raw fantasy points, but I think until you roster Kelce, and for those of you who have, and I know you guys both have on some teams, you finally see on the week-to-week basis, like what a difference it makes when your opponent's streaming some random tight end who scores 2.3 that week and has 1 catch, and you're just firing out 15, 16, 18, 20, and gaining that 17-point advantage on a weekly basis.
Okay, let's go to Amon-Ra St. Brown, our last guy we'll talk about today. Bust proof, says Dave. Now, he was the number 11 wide receiver per game in half and full PPR, number 12 in non-PPR. Azer stat, though, if you take out 2 games in which Amon-Ra St. Brown barely played, weeks 5 and 7, he was kind of a decoy in week 7, got hurt in week 5. And he would have been around wide receiver 6 to 8, depending on the format, and he would have been better than CeeDee Lamb on a per-game basis. And, Dave, you say Amon-Ra St. Brown is bust-proof.
Even when Jameson Williams comes back, even with the addition of Sam Laporta, even Marvin Jones coming back and Jahmyr Gibbs being in Detroit, I think he's on lock as the top target getter in the Lions offense. And as interesting as the run game is going to be with Gibbs and David Montgomery, I don't think the Lions' identity is going to stick with being just run first, run focused. I think that they actually love Jared Goff and they want to have him throw the football. And just the whole narrative on Jared Goff has changed. And I think St. Brown's part of the reason why. They've been on the same page really for 2 years now. And it's been the second half and the last third of his seasons where he's really been at his best. Adam, you mentioned that he was basically a decoy or a non-factor in weeks 5 and week 7 last year. How about his last 9 games with Detroit last year? 18.2 PPR points per game. That's on the same level as, I'm looking to see, there actually wasn't anybody close to that specific level. He would have been wide receiver 7 on that pace of 18.2 PPR points per game. You are almost certainly drafting St. Brown after the 7th wide receiver in your drafts. And then in 2021, he was a rookie. No one knew who he was, yet there he was starting with the Lions offense in their first preseason game. And he was ditching guys in coverage then. I was there. I watched it. It was pretty incredible. I just didn't think that there would be enough there for him. And it really didn't show up till the last 6 games of the season when he averaged 24.6 PPR points per game. No chance he's getting there. There are just too many mouths to feed in that offense. But that 18 PPR point range, I think he's there. And even with everybody else playing a role in Detroit, I just think St. Brown's the guy who's going to remain open the most in that short area field. And that's where Goff tends to gravitate toward. He knows he's going to have option routes on lock with St. Brown. They can change plays at the line of scrimmage based on the defense that Goff is seeing. Goff is certainly smart enough to see that. And I think St. Brown's just going to continue to be his guy. You can draft him in round 3 and have a bust-proof wide receiver on your fantasy squad.
Yeah, this is a tough case to make against because St. Brown, as Dave knows, we've discussed in the past, I'm very high on St. Brown. I'm on team rapport, and like Dave mentioned, I think he made a good point. He's top 5 in quarterback receiver rapport right now with Goff to St. Brown. I also I'm on team layup throws. If you can find somebody in your offense who can give you those layup throws, as I call them, which are just the ball snapped and within 2 seconds, a guy's open and you can get the football to him and you can move the chains. You're going to take those a lot as a quarterback because you need those. You can't just take everything downfield. All of that, I think, remains the same for Goff and St. Brown this year. I guess the only bust case I could make to kind of devil's advocate this would be potential for an evolution in Ben Johnson's offense there and maybe, and to some degree, in Jared Goff's game. Now, this is tougher case to make with Jameson Williams not playing the first 6 games. If Jameson Williams was playing, or once he gets back in the mix, maybe you can think about for the fantasy playoffs, things start to trail off a little bit for St. Brown. If Jameson Williams can be the player that I think he can be from a talent standpoint, we start to see more vertical oriented throws. We start to see more of those deep crossers, which I know Jameson Williams is going to run either to open up other parts of the offense or to get the football if he's getting open on those throws. And they're going to be more high. They're going to give the Lions, if they make those attempts, a better chance at explosive plays, which maybe they didn't feel like they get enough of last year. I don't know. The other bust case would be Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, they wanted to get a running back involved in the passing game with DeAndre Swift. It didn't work out because they didn't want Swift on the field, and he couldn't stay on the field, and he wasn't running the ball the way they wanted him to when they gave him the football. If they believe that Jahmyr Gibbs can process the run game enough to the point where they can keep him on the field for the pass game, do they start to run that offense a little bit more through the running back in the passing game than they have? So the only way this changes is if the offense evolves to a different degree. But even if that's the case, we still have a quarterback who has a history of targeting these easy slot receivers. He did it with Cooper Kupp. Now he's found his Cooper Kupp in Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it's just a hard case to make. But that would be the one case that they open up the offense and kind of change how it run, where the volume goes.
Amon-Ra St. Brown also had 3 catches, I believe, in which he was down inside the 2-yard line.
Oh, yeah.
So he could have had a better touchdown number, only 6 touchdowns on 146 targets for St. Brown. But I would say that if there's a bust case, it's that he's the only wide receiver in the last 3 seasons to finish top 8 with an ADOT lower than 8.5 yards.
True.
His was 6.5 yards. So
what was Cooper Kupp's the 2 seasons ago when he was? It must have been high. I guess. Yeah. Never mind. No, not 2 seasons ago.
Cooper Kupp was 8.6 in 2021. Okay. That's one of the lowest ADOTs, and he was wide receiver 1.
Right.
That's one of the lowest ADOTs of the top 8 receivers any of the last 3 years. But St. Brown was 2 yards lower than that. So he doesn't make plays. He's not a big play guy. He had one of the lowest explosive play rates among wide receivers with 50 or more targets. He was in the 70s. There were about 84 qualifying wide receivers there. He was in the 70s in explosive play rate. So he's just really relying on catches. He's not great so far on a per target basis. He's not great per catch. He's not great after the catch. He's fine. So that's the argument, is that, it's like a shorter area version of Keenan Allen. And do you want to take that with a top 20 pick, top 30 pick? I don't know. I mean, that's the bust case. And I guess if the targets went down because of Gibbs, because of Williams, all that stuff, then you're not looking at a guy who's making a ton of plays. So there it is. But I think, half PPR, to me, he's the 3rd round pick. I don't know about you guys. Full PPR is the 2nd round pick. But what about you? Maybe like 2-3 turn in half PPR, Dave?
I'm with you on that, but in full PPR, I am as a top 20 player.
Yeah, I'm with Dave on that. I feel very similar to the confidence I felt in drafting T. Higgins last year, just from the floor standpoint with Amon-Ra St. Brown this year. That was also a 2-3 turn pick, if I remember Higgins.
And I think he's got a higher floor than Higgins.
He does.
In PPR generally.
PPR, yeah.